Lean students get live demo of why Earth is called a death world. Chapter 1. The Arrival. The alien students arrived on Earth as part of the Galactic Exchange Program, their first impression of the planet colored by its wild, untamed landscapes and the rumors they had heard. Earth was known across the galaxy as a death world, a term reserved for planets teeming with life so aggressive and resilient that survival seemed improbable for most species. The students, hailing from worlds with calm ecosystems and stable environments, were both intrigued and terrified. Chapter 2. The Introduction. Their human guide, Dr. Elena Carter, greeted them with a warm smile. She was a biologist and the program's coordinator, tasked with introducing the students to Earth's ecosystems. The group consisted of 5 aliens: Klar from the aquatic world of Nilos, Vrith from the gas giant colonies, Tlin from the forest moon of Avar, and 2 others who were equally out of their element. They wore protective suits designed to shield them from Earth's harsh atmosphere and microbial life. "Welcome to Earth," Dr. Carter said. "Over the next month, you'll see why our planet is unique and why it's earned its reputation." Chapter 3. The First Encounter. The first demonstration of Earth's dangers came unexpectedly. While exploring a forest, the group stumbled upon a bear. The massive creature towered over them, its roar echoing through the trees. The aliens froze in terror, their translators struggling to convey the sheer ferocity of the sound. Dr. Carter, however, calmly raised her hands and backed away slowly, instructing the group to do the same. "Why doesn't it attack?" Klar whispered, their voice trembling. "Because we know how to behave," Dr. Carter replied. "Earth's predators are dangerous, but they're not mindless." The bear eventually lost interest and wandered off, leaving the aliens shaken but unharmed. Chapter 4. The Lesson in Resilience. Later, the group visited a human research facility where they witnessed a demonstration of human resilience. A volunteer allowed a controlled venomous snake bite, only to administer antivenom moments later. The aliens were horrified. "Why would you willingly expose yourself to danger?" Vrith asked, their gas-filled voice quivering. "To understand it better," the volunteer explained. "Knowledge is our greatest tool." Chapter 5. The Storm. The group experienced Earth's unpredictable weather firsthand during a sudden thunderstorm. Lightning cracked the sky, and torrential rain soaked them. The alien suits struggled to keep up with the changing conditions, but Dr. Carter guided them to safety, explaining Earth's weather systems along the way. "Your planet is alive," Tlin marveled. "It's as if it wants to test its inhabitants." Chapter 6. The Final Test. The climax of their visit came when the group participated in a survival exercise. Left in a controlled wilderness area, they had to navigate back to base using only basic tools. The aliens struggled, their reliance on advanced technology proving to be a hindrance. Dr. Carter, however, thrived, teaching them how to find water, build shelter, and identify edible plants. "You humans are like the creatures of this planet," Klar said. "You adapt to anything." Chapter 7. The Departure. As the program ended, the alien students left Earth with a newfound respect for its inhabitants. They had seen firsthand why Earth was called a death world, not because it was uninhabitable, but because it demanded resilience, ingenuity, and strength from those who lived there. "Earth is not just a death world," Tlin said. "It's a world of life, in its most intense form." The students returned to their home planets, their perspectives forever changed, carrying stories of Earth's wonders and dangers to the farthest corners of the galaxy. Chapter 8. An Unplanned Encounter. On their last day on Earth, the alien students accompanied Dr. Carter to a rural village to observe how humans adapted to living in harmony with nature. As they walked through the dense forests surrounding the village, they heard a sudden commotion. A wild boar had wandered too close to the village and was charging at a group of children playing nearby. Dr. Carter acted immediately, shouting instructions to the villagers while grabbing a stick to distract the boar. The alien students watched in awe as the humans worked together to subdue the animal without harming it, demonstrating both courage and ingenuity. Tlin couldn't help but remark, "Your species doesn't just survive chaos, it thrives in it." Chapter 9. The Farewell Feast. That evening, the villagers held a farewell feast for the group. The alien students were introduced to Earth's culinary diversity, sampling dishes made from ingredients they could barely identify. Despite their initial hesitation, they found themselves enjoying the meal, marveling at how humans had learned to transform the planet's raw resources into artful creations. Clar raised a glass of water, one of the few substances they could safely consume, and said, "To humanity, the most resilient and resourceful beings we've ever encountered. You have shown us that life on a death world is not just about survival, it's about finding beauty in adversity." Chapter 10: The Legacy of the Death World. Back aboard their transport ship, the alien students reflected on their time on Earth. Each of them carried souvenirs: a flower pressed in a book, a piece of volcanic rock, and countless digital recordings of their experiences. But more importantly, they carried new perspectives. Vrith, who had once viewed Earth as a chaotic and dangerous anomaly, now saw it as a testament to the strength of life itself. "We came here expecting to study a dangerous planet," they said. "But we leave having studied the indomitable spirit of its people." As the ship left Earth's orbit, Dr. Carter's parting words echoed in their minds. Earth may be a death world, but it's also a cradle of resilience, creativity, and hope. Remember that as you share your stories with the galaxy. Chapter 11: The Storm Unleashed. The alien students were awestruck as they gazed at the Earth from orbit, their holographic displays highlighting the planet's lush greens, deep blues, and swirling white clouds. To the untrained eye, it was a paradise. But the students of the Galactic Institute of Interstellar Studies knew better. Earth was classified as a death world, a term reserved for planets where life thrived despite overwhelming odds. Professor Zilthar adjusted his translator collar, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "Prepare yourselves, students. Today's excursion will be a field study in resilience. Earth's environment is as unpredictable as it is lethal." The shuttle descended into the atmosphere, its shields shimmering as they passed through turbulent air currents. Below, the group could see their destination, a dense rainforest teeming with life. The Earthling guide, James, waited for them at the clearing, his weathered gear a testament to his experience. "Welcome to the jungle," James greeted them with a grin. "Keep close and don't touch anything unless I say it's safe. Even the plants here can kill you." The group ventured into the forest, marveling at the vibrant ecosystem. Luminescent fungi glowed in the underbrush, and exotic birds flitted through the canopy. But the wonder quickly gave way to unease. The air grew heavy, and the distant rumble of thunder signaled an approaching storm. "Professor," James said, his voice tight, "we need to move. Fast." The group barely had time to react before the sky opened up. Rain poured in torrents, and the wind howled like a living thing. Lightning split the sky, striking a nearby tree and sending it crashing to the ground. "This is a Category 5 storm," James shouted over the chaos. "Follow me." Chapter 12: Survival Instincts. The storm's fury was relentless. Trees bent and snapped under the onslaught, and the ground turned to mud beneath their feet. The alien students, unused to such conditions, struggled to keep up with James. One student, a reptilian named Krill, slipped and fell, his scales coated in mud. James doubled back, hauling Krill to his feet. "You okay?" Krill's wide eyes reflected both fear and gratitude. "This planet is madness. How do you survive here?" James grinned despite the situation. "We adapt. Now move." The group reached a rocky outcrop, where James led them into a narrow cave. The storm raged outside, but the cave provided shelter. James quickly started a fire, using flint and dry tinder from his waterproof pack. The students watched in fascination as James worked. "This is why Earthlings are so resilient," Professor Zilthar said. "They've evolved to thrive in a world that constantly tries to kill them." As the storm subsided, the group emerged from the cave to survey the damage. Trees were uprooted, and the once vibrant forest was now a scene of devastation. Yet, amidst the destruction, life stirred. Birds returned to the trees, and insects buzzed in the underbrush. James gestured to the scene. Earth bounces back. So do we. Chapter 13. The Jungle Strikes Back. The alien students huddled around a small fire James had built using the remnants of dry kindling from his pack. The storm had passed, but the rainforest was alive with unsettling sounds. The distant cries of animals, the rustling of leaves, and the low hum of insects created a symphony of unease. "I still don't understand," said Lorna, her feline-like ears twitching. "Why would any species willingly live on a planet like this?" James chuckled, poking at the fire. "We don't exactly have a choice. But Earth has its perks. It's dangerous, sure, but it's also full of life, beauty, and opportunity. You just have to be tough enough to survive it." Krill, the reptilian student, hissed softly. "Tough enough? You mean reckless enough?" Before James could respond, a sudden, sharp noise pierced the air. The group froze. "What was that?" whispered Zixal, her crystalline body dimming as she instinctively tried to blend into the surroundings. James rose slowly, his hand resting on his rifle. "Stay close. Something's out there." The firelight flickered, casting eerie shadows as the jungle seemed to close in around them. Suddenly, a massive creature burst through the underbrush. It was a snake-like predator, its scales glistening with a bioluminescent glow. "Scatter!" James shouted, firing a shot to distract the creature. The alien students scrambled in different directions, their panic overriding their training. James cursed under his breath, aiming another shot to drive the creature away. It lunged toward Lorna, who froze in terror. With a burst of speed, James tackled Lorna out of the way, narrowly avoiding the creature's snapping jaws. He rolled to his feet, pulling a flare from his pack and igniting it. The bright light and heat drove the predator back into the jungle. Breathing heavily, James helped Lorna to her feet. "You okay?" She nodded shakily. I didn't think it would come after me." James smirked. "Welcome to Earth. Everything here is hungry, and you're on the menu." Chapter 14. The Inferno Awakens. Morning brought no relief. The jungle was eerily quiet, the usual cacophony of life replaced by an oppressive silence. The group pressed on, their nerves frayed from the previous night's encounter. As they approached the base of a dormant volcano, James stopped abruptly. He knelt to the ground, examining the faint tremors beneath his feet. "This isn't good," he muttered. Professor Zilthar tilted his head, his antennae twitching. "What is it, Earthlings?" James pointed to the faint plumes of smoke rising from the volcano's peak. "This volcano is about to blow. We need to move." The professor frowned. "Surely it won't erupt so suddenly. We should." His words were cut off by a deep, guttural rumble. The ground shook violently, and a deafening roar filled the air as the volcano erupted. Molten rock spewed skyward, and a cloud of ash began to spread, darkening the sky. "Run!" James shouted, grabbing Zixal, who had frozen in shock. The group sprinted through the jungle, the heat of the eruption chasing them. Lava flowed like a river of fire, consuming everything in its path. The air grew thick with ash, making it difficult to breathe. James led them toward a river, shouting instructions over the chaos. "Get in the water. It's our best chance." The group plunged into the river, the cool water a stark contrast to the searing heat around them. They clung to rocks and debris as the current carried them away from the eruption. When they finally reached safety, they crawled onto the riverbank, coughing and gasping for air. The once vibrant jungle was now a smoldering wasteland. Professor Zilthar looked at James, his usually calm demeanor shaken. "Your planet is a paradox, Earthling. It is both a cradle of life and a harbinger of death." James, drenched and exhausted, managed a weak smile. "That's Earth for you. Beautiful, deadly, and impossible to forget." Chapter 15. The Cost of Survival. The alien students sat in stunned silence along the riverbank, their shimmering bodies dimmed by exhaustion and fear. The once lush jungle was now a smoldering expanse of ash and molten rock. Even the air seemed to vibrate with the aftershocks of the volcano's fury. James paced nearby, his rifle slung over his shoulder. His gaze swept the horizon, scanning for any signs of danger. "We need to keep moving. This area won't stay safe for long. Safe. Krill hissed, his scales dulled from the soot and grime. Nothing on this planet is safe. Why do your people stay here? Why not leave? James crouched beside Krill, meeting his wide, fearful eyes. Because Earth isn't just danger. It's home. It's where we've learned to survive, to adapt, and to thrive. If we ran every time things got hard, we wouldn't be human. Zixal's crystalline form flickered with faint light as she spoke. Your resilience is remarkable, but it comes at a cost. This environment is relentless. How do you endure it? James sighed, looking out at the devastated landscape. We endure because we have no other choice. We've learned to work with the chaos, not against it. That's the only way to survive a death world. Before anyone could respond, a low growl echoed from the jungle. James froze, motioning for silence. The students tensed, their alien senses heightened by fear. From the shadows emerged a pack of creatures resembling oversized wolves, their fur matted and their eyes glowing with predatory intent. They moved as one, circling the group. James raised his rifle, his voice calm but firm. Stay behind me. Don't run. They'll chase you if you do. The students huddled together as James took aim. The leader of the pack lunged, and James fired a precise shot, dropping it mid-leap. The rest of the pack hesitated, growling and snapping, but James held his ground. Finally, the pack retreated, disappearing into the jungle. James lowered his rifle, exhaling slowly. Let's move. The longer we stay here, the more attention we'll attract. Chapter 16. Bonds Forged in Fire. By the time the group reached the extraction point, they were battered, exhausted, and forever changed. The alien students, once confident in their superiority, now carried a newfound respect for Earth and its inhabitants. The shuttle descended from the sky, its sleek frame gleaming in the sunlight. As the ramp lowered, Professor Zilthar turned to James. Earthling, your actions have saved us more times than I can count. Your bravery and adaptability are extraordinary. James shrugged, a small smile tugging at his lips. Just doing my job. Besides, you're not so bad yourselves. You kept it together when most people would have fallen apart. Lorna stepped forward, her feline eyes glinting with curiosity. Do all humans possess your level of resilience, or are you an anomaly? James laughed. Humans are all about resilience. It's kind of our thing. We've been dealing with death world problems since day one. Zixal's crystalline body shimmered as she spoke. Perhaps there is much we can learn from your species. If nothing else, you've proven that even in the face of overwhelming odds, survival is possible. As the group boarded the shuttle, James lingered at the base of the ramp, looking back at the jungle. Despite the destruction, life was already beginning to reclaim the land. Shoots of green pushed through the ash, and the calls of birds echoed in the distance. Professor Zilthar approached, his antennae twitching thoughtfully. Earth is a paradox. It is as cruel as it is beautiful, as deadly as it is life-giving. Perhaps that is why your people thrive here. You mirror its duality. James nodded. Yeah, I guess we do. But if you ever decide to come back, maybe bring a helmet. Earth doesn't pull its punches. The professor chuckled, a rare sound from the usually stoic alien. Noted. As the shuttle ascended into the sky, the students watched Earth shrink below them. They carried with them more than just data and samples. They carried stories of survival, courage, and the indomitable spirit of humanity. For James, it was just another day on the death world. Chapter 17. The Aftermath. The shuttle hummed softly as it ascended through Earth's atmosphere, leaving behind the chaotic beauty of the death world. Inside, the alien students sat in contemplative silence. Their once pristine uniforms were torn and stained, their bodies battered from the relentless trials of Earth. James leaned against the bulkhead, arms crossed, observing them. Despite their exhaustion, there was a flicker of something new in their expressions: respect. Professor Zilthar broke the silence. Students, what have you learned from this experience? Krill, still nursing a scratch from their encounter with the jungle predator, spoke first. I've learned that survival on Earth requires constant vigilance and adaptability. Every moment demands a decision. Fight, flee, or endure. Zixal added, her crystalline body shimmering faintly. It is not just the environment that is formidable, but the creatures that inhabit it. Humans, in particular, are astonishingly resilient. They face adversity with determination and creativity. James smirked. Flattery will get you everywhere. Lorna's feline eyes narrowed thoughtfully. But it is not just resilience. Humans also seem to possess a unique sense of unity in the face of danger. James didn't just protect himself, he protected all of us, even when it endangered him. The professor nodded. Indeed. Earthlings are not merely survivors. They are protectors. This trait is perhaps their greatest strength. James straightened, his tone serious. Earth's tough, yeah, but it's also home. Everything here, from the smallest insect to the biggest predator, has a role to play. It's not just about surviving, it's about living, thriving, and making it all mean something. The students exchanged glances, their perspectives shifting. Chapter 18, A Proposal for the Future. Back aboard the alien mothership, the students and Professor Zilthar presented their findings to the Galactic Institute of Interstellar Studies. The grand hall was filled with representatives from dozens of species, each eager to hear about the infamous Deathworld. Zixal stepped forward, her crystalline form catching the light. Earth is a world of extremes. Its environment is hostile, its creatures relentless, and its humans remarkable. They are not just survivors, but innovators and protectors. Krill added, we recommend Earth's classification as a death world remain unchanged. However, we propose a new initiative, a cross-species exchange program to foster understanding and collaboration. The hall buzzed with murmurs of surprise and intrigue. A representative from the aquatic Earth species raised a tentacle. You suggest inviting Earthlings into the galactic community? Are they not too volatile? James, who had been invited to the presentation, stepped forward. Volatile? Sure. But that's what makes us good allies. We adapt, we protect, and we don't back down. If you want to understand how to survive the worst the galaxy can throw at you, Earthlings are the ones to learn from. Professor Zilthar's antennae twitched in agreement. James is correct. Earthlings possess a unique perspective born from their environment. Their inclusion in the galactic community could benefit us all. After a tense deliberation, the Council reached a decision. The exchange program was approved, and Earth was officially designated as a training ground for resilience and survival studies. As the meeting adjourned, James approached the students. Looks like we'll be seeing more of each other. Zixal smiled faintly. I suspect we have much to learn from you, James. And us from you, James replied. Just remember to pack a good pair of boots and maybe a flamethrower. You'll need it. The group laughed, the tension finally easing. Despite the challenges they had faced, a bond had been forged, one that promised a future of mutual respect and collaboration. As the alien ship prepared to leave Earth's orbit, James watched from the observation deck, a faint smile on his face. Earth had shown its true nature, and for better or worse, it had left an indelible mark on the galaxy. Chapter 19, The Galactic Classroom. Weeks had passed since the Galactic Institute approved the Earth-based Survival Exchange Program. The first cohort of alien students returned to their respective worlds, carrying with them vivid tales of Earth's dangers and the resilience of its inhabitants. Their reports sparked widespread curiosity and, in some cases, trepidation among other species in the galaxy. James found himself at the heart of the program, appointed as Earth's first official survival instructor for alien species. His rugged demeanor and first-hand experience made him the ideal candidate. The program's base of operations was established in a remote but relatively stable region of Earth's wilderness, where controlled environments could simulate the planet's deadliest conditions. The next group of alien students arrived in sleek shuttles, their designs reflecting the diversity of the galaxy. This cohort was larger, with species ranging from the amphibious aquilin to the insectoid vree. As James stood on the platform to greet them, he couldn't help but chuckle. Welcome to Earth, folks. Hope you brought a sense of humor, because you're gonna need it. The group exchanged uneasy glances. One student, a towering, armored creature named Garath, rumbled, "Is this world truly as perilous as the stories claim?" James grinned. "Oh, it's worse. But don't worry, you've got me to guide you." First rule of Earth survival: expect the unexpected. The first lesson. The program began with a simulated storm, designed to mimic Earth's unpredictable weather. James led the group through a series of exercises, teaching them how to build shelters, navigate rough terrain, and find food in the wild. The students struggled at first. The Aquilin, used to aquatic environments, found the dry heat oppressive. The Vree, accustomed to hive life, were unnerved by the isolation of the wilderness. But under James's guidance, they began to adapt. By the end of the day, the group sat around a campfire, sharing their experiences. Garath spoke up, his deep voice resonating. "This planet demands respect. It is not a place to conquer, but to coexist with." James nodded, poking at the fire. "That's the second rule of Earth survival: respect the planet. It's bigger, older, and tougher than you'll ever be." Chapter 20. A Test of Unity. The program's final challenge was a real-world survival exercise. The students were dropped into a dense rainforest, tasked with reaching a designated extraction point while navigating Earth's dangers. They were given basic supplies but had to rely on their training and teamwork to succeed. At first, the group struggled. Each species had its own instincts and methods, leading to conflicts and miscommunication. The Vree wanted to move as a single unit, while the Aquilin preferred to scout ahead. Garath's brute strength often clashed with the more delicate approaches of the crystalline Zanara. Disaster struck when a sudden landslide separated the group. James, monitoring from a distance, decided not to intervene. "Let's see if they've learned anything," he muttered. The students regrouped under Garath's leadership, combining their unique abilities to navigate the treacherous terrain. Zanara used her refractive body to signal others, while the Vree built temporary shelters from debris. The Aquilin located a nearby river for fresh water, and Garath cleared obstacles with his strength. When they finally reached the extraction point, exhausted but triumphant, James was waiting for them. "Not bad," he said, clapping Garath on the shoulder. "You worked together, used your strengths, and didn't panic. That's the third rule of Earth survival. Nobody makes it alone." A new perspective. Back at the base, the students reflected on their experience. Zanara spoke first, her voice melodic. "Earth has taught us that survival is not just about strength or intelligence, but about adaptability and unity." Garath nodded. "I came here expecting to prove my dominance over this so-called death world. Instead, I learned humility." James leaned back in his chair, a satisfied grin on his face. "That's Earth for you. It doesn't care who you are or where you're from. It'll test you, break you, and if you're lucky, teach you something along the way." As the students prepared to leave, James handed each of them a small token, a carved piece of wood from the jungle they had survived. "A reminder," he said, "that you faced the death world and came out stronger." As the shuttles ascended into the sky, James watched them go, a mix of pride and exhaustion settling over him. Earth's reputation as a death world had been solidified, but so had its place as a teacher, a crucible for growth, resilience, and understanding. For James, it was just the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and there were plenty more students to show why Earth was unlike any other world. Chapter 21. The Unseen Predator. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows over the jungle as the group of alien students followed their Earth guides through the dense foliage. Their instructor, a seasoned human named Sergeant Hawk, led the way, his eyes scanning the surroundings with practiced precision. The alien students, a diverse mix of species from across the galaxy, were still in awe of the planet's savage beauty. "This," Sergeant Hawk said, "is what makes Earth one of the most dangerous places in the galaxy. You've seen the plants, the animals, the terrain, but now, it's time for you to witness the true predator of Earth." The alien students murmured in excitement, eager to see what had made Earth infamous. They had been briefed on the basics: the deadly plants, the venomous creatures, and the relentless weather patterns. But nothing could prepare them for what was about to unfold. Suddenly, a rustle in the bushes ahead of them caught their attention. The students froze, their antennae twitching, and their multi-eyed gaze shifting toward the sound. Sergeant Hawk raised a hand, signaling them to remain silent. "Stay close and stay quiet," he whispered. Out of the underbrush emerged a creature that none of the students had seen before. It was a massive, sleek, and muscular feline, its fur a mottled pattern of browns and grays, its eyes gleaming with hunger. The alien students instinctively recoiled, their bodies tensing in fear. They had heard of Earth's apex predators, but seeing one in person was an entirely different experience. "This," Sergeant Hawk said, "is a tiger. And it's one of the deadliest creatures you'll encounter on Earth." The tiger's gaze locked onto the group, and for a moment, there was a stillness in the air. Then, with a speed that defied belief, the tiger lunged, its claws outstretched. The alien students screamed in panic, but Sergeant Hawk was ready. With a swift motion, he threw a small device to the ground. The device emitted a high-pitched sound, causing the tiger to hesitate, its ears twitching in confusion. "Not today," Sergeant Hawk muttered, pulling out a tranquilizer gun. The tiger growled, but the sound of the tranquilizer dart hitting its side was almost imperceptible. Within seconds, the massive predator staggered, its movements slowing as the tranquilizer took effect. Finally, it collapsed to the ground, unconscious. The alien students were still shaking, their hearts racing from the adrenaline. Sergeant Hawk stood over the tiger, his expression grim. "On Earth," he said, "you're never truly safe. You may think you've mastered the environment, but the predators here are always watching, always waiting. That's why Earth is called a death world. The danger never stops." The students looked at the tiger, its powerful body now lying motionless on the ground. It was a sobering sight, a reminder that even the most advanced species in the galaxy could be brought to their knees by the relentless ferocity of Earth's wildlife. Chapter 22: The Final Test. The next day, the alien students were taken to a different part of the planet, far from the jungle. This time, they found themselves in a wide, open plain, surrounded by tall grasses that seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction. Sergeant Hawk stood before them, his face serious. "Yesterday, you saw the tiger. Today, you'll face something different. This is the final test, the ultimate demonstration of why Earth is a death world." The alien students exchanged nervous glances. They had seen the ferocity of a tiger, but what could be worse than that? Sergeant Hawk handed each of them a small device. "This is a tracker.
Keep it on you at all times.
If anything goes wrong, we'll find you." With a sharp whistle, he signaled to the group to begin moving. The students, though still uneasy, followed his lead, their eyes scanning the horizon. Hours passed, and the tension in the air grew thicker. The students were on edge, constantly looking over their shoulders, waiting for something to happen. But nothing did. The landscape was eerily quiet, save for the occasional rustle of wind through the grass. Then, without warning, a loud roar shattered the silence. It was a deep, bone-rattling sound, like thunder in the distance. The students froze, their hearts pounding in their chests. "Run!" Sergeant Hawk shouted, his voice filled with urgency. The alien students took off at once, their legs pumping with all their strength. Behind them, the ground trembled as something massive began to move. The roar grew louder, closer, and the students could feel the air shift with the approach of something enormous. One of the students, a tall insectoid with multiple limbs, looked back and saw it. A massive creature, its body covered in thick, armored plates, charging toward them. It was a rhinoceros, but unlike any they had ever seen before. Its horn was jagged and sharp, and its eyes burned with a primal fury. "It's a death charge," the insectoid screamed. "We can't outrun it." Sergeant Hawk was already moving, his voice calm but commanding. "Split up. Spread out. Don't let it focus on any one of you." The alien students scattered in every direction, their instincts kicking in as they tried to avoid the charging beast. The rhinoceros thundered forward, its massive feet pounding the earth as it sought out its prey. For a moment, the students thought they might escape. But then, the rhinoceros locked onto one of them, a small, agile alien with bright green skin, and charged straight at it. Without hesitation, Sergeant Hawk leaped forward, tackling the student out of the way just in time. The rhinoceros roared in frustration, but it didn't stop. It turned, its eyes now fixed on the human. "Go!" Sergeant Hawk shouted, his voice urgent. "Get to safety." The alien students, now fully aware of the danger, ran faster than ever before, their hearts pounding in their chests. The sound of the rhinoceros's charge faded behind them, but they knew the danger was far from over. As they reached the edge of the plain, the massive creature finally slowed and stopped, its energy spent. Sergeant Hawk, panting and covered in dirt, turned to the students. "Now you understand," he said, his voice grim. "On Earth, there is no mercy. The predators don't care who or what you are. It's kill or be killed." The students, though exhausted and shaken, nodded in understanding. They had seen the truth of Earth's deadly nature firsthand. They had learned the hard way why this planet was called a death world, and they would never forget it. Chapter 23. The Tempest. The alien students, still reeling from their close call with the charging rhinoceros, had little time to recover. Sergeant Hawk, ever vigilant, quickly gathered them together and led them to a new location, a stark contrast to the open plains they had just fled. They were now standing at the edge of a massive cliff, looking out over a vast ocean. The wind howled in their ears, and the sky was darkening rapidly. The students, still catching their breath, exchanged nervous glances. They had learned the hard way that Earth was a place of relentless danger, but they were beginning to wonder just how far this death world reputation stretched. "Welcome to the ocean," Sergeant Hawk said, his voice barely audible over the increasing wind. "What you're about to experience isn't something you can see or fight. It's something you have to survive." The students looked at each other, confused. They had heard about Earth's oceans, the terrifying creatures that lived beneath the surface, the unpredictable tides, but they hadn't been prepared for what was coming next. Sergeant Hawk pointed to the horizon, where dark clouds were rapidly gathering. "What you're witnessing right now is a storm forming. On Earth, storms are no joke. This one is a Class 5 tempest, one of the most violent storms we get." The students stared in disbelief. They had seen storms on their home planets, but nothing like this. The wind was picking up, and the ocean began to churn violently, waves crashing against the rocks below. "You're about to feel the full force of what Earth can throw at you," Sergeant Hawk continued. "In just a few minutes, this storm will hit, and it won't stop until it's done. You need to stay close to me, and don't even think about running. You won't outrun this." Before the students could react, the first wave of the storm hit. The wind howled like a living creature, tearing at their clothes and pushing them back. Rain began to pour down in sheets, stinging their skin like tiny needles. The temperature dropped rapidly, and the sky turned an eerie shade of green. The alien students struggled to stay on their feet, their bodies not built for Earth's extreme weather. Some of them, more delicate than others, began to stumble as the wind grew stronger. Sergeant Hawk, however, moved with practiced ease, guiding them toward a small shelter carved into the rock face. "Move, move, move," he shouted, his voice barely audible over the roar of the storm. The students pushed forward, their legs burning with exertion as they fought against the storm. The wind was so strong that it felt like it was trying to tear them apart, and the rain was blinding, making it impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. Finally, they reached the shelter, and Sergeant Hawk ushered them inside. The students huddled together, their bodies shaking from the cold and exhaustion. Through the small opening in the rock, they could see the storm raging outside, the sky lit up by flashes of lightning. "Now you understand," Sergeant Hawk said, his voice grim. "On Earth, nature doesn't care about your survival. It's as deadly as any predator you'll encounter." The students were silent, their minds racing. They had learned that the dangers of Earth were not just limited to its creatures, but to the very environment itself. The storm outside was a force of nature, something they couldn't fight, only endure. And endure they did, as the storm raged on for hours. The alien students huddled in the shelter, each one reflecting on the brutal truth of Earth's wild, unforgiving nature. Chapter 24. The Last Lesson. The storm had finally passed, leaving behind a battered, bruised world. The alien students, though exhausted, were still alive. They emerged from the shelter to find the landscape completely transformed. The once calm ocean was now a tumultuous mess of crashing waves, and the ground beneath their feet was soaked and slippery. Sergeant Hawk stood before them, his face hardened by the storm. You've all made it through the tempest, but there's one more lesson you need to learn. It's not just about surviving the predators or the weather. It's about what happens when everything goes wrong. The students, still shaken from their ordeal, gathered around him, their minds racing with questions. They had seen the tigers, the rhinoceros, and the storm, but what could be worse than that? You've experienced Earth's violence, its unpredictability, and its brutality, Sergeant Hawk continued. But there's one thing you need to understand above all else. Earth is a world of constant struggle. It doesn't give you time to rest. The moment you think you've conquered it, it throws something else at you. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. The alien students, their bodies sore and their minds overwhelmed, nodded in understanding. They had seen the truth of his words in the past few days. They had fought the environment, fought the creatures, and fought their own fear. But they had also learned that survival on Earth wasn't just about strength or speed. It was about resilience, adaptability, and the will to keep going when everything seemed stacked against you. Sergeant Hawk turned toward the horizon, where the first rays of sunlight were beginning to pierce the storm clouds. There's a saying on Earth, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And that's the truth of this world. If you can survive here, you can survive anywhere. The students looked out over the landscape, the same world that had nearly destroyed them just hours before. They had learned what it meant to face the dangers of Earth head-on, to fight, to endure, and to survive. As they stood there, in the aftermath of the storm, they understood. Earth was a death world, not because of its creatures or its storms, but because it demanded everything from those who lived on it. The alien students had seen the worst of Earth, and they had survived. But more importantly, they had learned. And that lesson would stay with them for the rest of their lives. Chapter 25. The Final Trial. The alien students had seen it all. The lethal predators, the deadly storms, the unforgiving terrain. They had survived Earth's most brutal challenges, but Sergeant Hawk had one final test for them. A test that would push them to their absolute limits. They had arrived at a new location, this time, a dense, rocky mountain range that rose sharply from the earth like jagged teeth. The sky was clear, but the air was thin and cold, and the wind howled through the narrow gaps between the towering peaks. Sergeant Hawk stood before them, his eyes scanning the horizon. "This is it," he said, his voice steady, but filled with a quiet intensity. "The final trial. If you can make it through this, you'll have proven that you can survive on Earth. Not just survive, but thrive." The alien students exchanged uncertain glances. They had learned a lot, but they were tired. Their bodies were bruised and battered from the past trials, and their minds were weary from the constant stress. Could they really handle whatever was coming next? "You've faced the creatures of Earth, the storms, and the environment," Sergeant Hawk continued. "But now, you'll face something different. Something more insidious. This trial isn't about strength. It's about your ability to think, to adapt, and to make decisions under pressure." He gestured toward the mountain range. "Your goal is to reach the top of that peak," he said, pointing to the highest point in the distance. "You'll have to navigate through the rocky terrain, deal with the dangers that lie ahead, and make it to the summit before nightfall. If you fail, you'll be exposed to the dangers of the mountain after dark. And believe me, the night here is just as deadly as the day." The alien students looked at each other, their faces a mixture of fear and determination. They had survived so much already, but this final challenge seemed like the most difficult yet. Without another word, Sergeant Hawk turned and began to climb the mountain, his movements fluid and confident. The students followed suit, each one taking their first steps into the treacherous terrain. The climb was grueling. The rocky surface was slippery, and the air grew thinner with every step. Some of the students, particularly those from planets with lower gravity, struggled to keep up. Others, more accustomed to extreme environments, moved with ease, their experience helping them to navigate the rough landscape. As they ascended, the dangers of the mountain began to reveal themselves. The rocks were loose and treacherous, threatening to send anyone who lost their footing tumbling down the side. The wind howled with increasing intensity, threatening to knock them off balance. And in the distance, strange, eerie sounds echoed through the mountains, warning of creatures that lurked in the shadows. Despite the obstacles, the students pressed on, their determination driving them forward. They knew that failure was not an option. The lessons they had learned on Earth had prepared them for this moment. They had to keep going no matter what. As they neared the summit, the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the mountain. The temperature dropped rapidly, and the students' breath became shallow as the cold air stung their lungs. Almost there, Sergeant Hawk called out, his voice cutting through the wind. "Keep moving. You're almost at the top." The students pushed through the last stretch, their bodies aching from the climb. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached the summit. They stood there, gasping for breath, looking out over the vast expanse of Earth below them. They had made it. Sergeant Hawk stood beside them, his eyes scanning the horizon. "You've done it," he said, his voice filled with pride. "You've proven that you can survive on this death world. You've faced the predators, the storms, the terrain, and the challenges. And you've come out the other side." The alien students looked at each other, their exhaustion replaced by a sense of accomplishment. They had done it. They had survived Earth's trials. But as they looked out over the world they had conquered, they knew one thing for certain. Earth would never be a place they could truly tame. It was a death world, and it would always be waiting for them, ready to test their limits again. Chapter 26: A New Beginning. The alien students stood at the summit, the last rays of sunlight fading behind them. The mountain range stretched out in every direction, the jagged peaks a constant reminder of the brutal challenges they had faced. But as they looked out over the landscape, they knew that they had accomplished something extraordinary. Sergeant Hawk stood beside them, his face unreadable. He had watched them struggle, adapt, and survive. He had seen their fear and their doubt, but he had also seen their determination and their resilience. "You've done it," he repeated, his voice softer now. "You've survived Earth. But survival isn't the end. It's just the beginning." The students turned to look at him, their faces a mix of confusion and curiosity. What did he mean? "On Earth," Sergeant Hawk continued, "surviving is the first step. But thriving, truly thriving, requires something more. It requires you to adapt, to understand this world, and to respect it. You've faced its dangers, but now you need to learn how to live with them." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the students. "You've learned that Earth is a place of constant struggle, but it's also a place of incredible beauty and potential. If you can learn to live with its dangers, to understand its rhythms, you can find a way to thrive here. But it's not easy. It never will be." The students stood in silence, taking in his words. They had come to Earth thinking it was just another planet, another challenge to overcome. But now they understood. Earth was a world that demanded respect. It was a world that could destroy you in an instant, but it could also offer incredible rewards to those who learn to live with it. Sergeant Hawk turned to leave, his steps purposeful. "This is your last lesson, students. You've learned what Earth can do to you. Now, you need to decide what you're going to do with that knowledge." As the alien students stood at the summit, watching Sergeant Hawk disappear into the distance, they knew that their time on Earth had come to an end. They had faced the planet's most brutal challenges, and they had survived. But they also knew that they would carry the lessons of Earth with them for the rest of their lives. They had learned what it meant to face the unknown, to adapt, and to never give up. And that knowledge would serve them well, no matter where they went. Earth had shown them its deadly side, but it had also shown them what it meant to truly survive. And for the first time, the alien students understood why Earth was called a death world.